All right, welcome to video number 5. This is where everything gets fun. This is my favorite part. We're going into flower. And so at this point, you should know that to get your plants to flower, your cannabis, they are a photoperiod dependent plant, which means that the only way to get them to start fruiting or flowering and getting to the cycle that we're looking for is to switch their lights to 12 hours of light or less per day, just like what happened naturally outside. Now, the only difference outside is that this usually happens very slowly. The days get shorter and shorter and shorter until all of a sudden they're at 12 hours or very close to that. Certain areas will be, closer to 12 hours all the time. So indoors, we're trying to mimic what's going to work best. And you've seen that we've transitioned from a lot of light through veg to a little less light, pre-bloom to 16 hours. Now we're in flower. We've flipped to 12-12. I run my lights at night. I typically start them like 5, 6, 7 o'clock at night, so that when I get home from work, the lights are on. I can tend to the garden. If I really need to, I can get up super early and check on them. But all night, when it's freezing cold out, my lights are on, keeping things warm. And in the summer, all day when it's super hot out, my lights are off, keeping it easy to keep cool. And when it's night out, it's usually cooler out. It's easier on the grow room. So that's one tip. All right. The bloom transition, I will say, is like the first 4 weeks of flower. You can follow this schedule, meaning the first 2 weeks are really going to be a huge stretch, a huge boom in size. That third week, you'll kind of see that stretch starting to stop, and you'll see frost starting to come in. And that fourth week, when we get there, we're really starting to now get to the other side of flowering, where you're not seeing that massive veg. You're really starting to see flowers stack and starting to see those nodes connect and get buds everywhere. And if we've set things up right, we're going to get a lot of yield and quality. And so during this stretch is the most important part. During the pre-bloom, we already top dressed. We added that extra calcium. If you didn't have, the craft blend, which has that gypsum in there, you could certainly just top dress with some gypsum, or maybe take like a half cup of gypsum in a 5-gallon bucket of water and give a little bit to each plant. But giving it that calcium as it goes into flower is something that we've been recommended to by agronomists. We've talked to different growers that have tried that and had great success. The reason why you don't hear us talking about magnesium or CalMag is because all of our soil tests show that we have plenty of magnesium in any of our living soil systems. So it's just about that calcium. Okay, if you start doing that at flower, whether you just top dress with it, water it in, use our BuildASoil, you're going to have some really good results, because that calcium will really help this stretch period, and it'll help set the plant up for success. Besides that, we've stopped using the aloe vera. I want to talk about this. In flower, the aloe vera flakes, one of the things that happens is in flower, there's a switch that a plant has. And as far as if you read about the salicylic acid and jasminic acid pathways in a plant, typically it's like a switch. You go from that salicylic acid pathway over to the jasminic acid pathway. And in flowering, if we want to go towards flowering, we don't want to keep triggering that salicylic acid side. Well, I don't think it's that exact when we're using aloe vera. It's not like we're using chemical salicylic acid. I still think it's going to be best to take the aloe vera out of the equation now and just use the Thermex 70 as your wetting agent. And so the very first ingredient I want you to add when you're in that bloom transition is to grab your Thermex 70 yucca, put a few drops in your thing, or measure out 2 to 3 milliliters per gallon and pour it in. It's kind of like molasses. You'll get good at working with it. But once your water is all soapy, just like normal, now we can add our other ingredients. And you'll notice that the, Microbe Complete we've cut out now. There's no reason really. In our first schedule, we had to go on for a couple more weeks, and you could do that. But the main reason that we stopped using it now in our new schedule in bloom is because we've already added the mycorrhizae and all these things so many times that it should have built a really strong foundation for this biology. And so to continue to build on this foundation from the Microbe Complete, he came out with a new product called the BioPhos, which we're going to go add into the no-till bundle. And if you don't have it, you can order it. But the BioPhos is going to be for flowering. It builds on this foundation, and I want you to pay close attention to this product, because there's a number of other products that are going to come on the market that are going to have some of these species trying to copycat, because this product is really ahead of its game. It's a phosphorus mobilizer, but it's well-rounded, just like the Microbe Complete, just like our no-till systems. It's not trying to hit one thing. It's trying to do a consortium and be balanced. And so when it comes to phosphorus mobility, this creates enzymes, it mobilizes phosphorus, it feeds itself, and it builds on this foundation of biology. But it's a lot more potent because there's no mycorrhizae in here any longer. a little bit goes a long way. In fact, this bag is only 8 ounces and it does 2 acres of row crops, or 72 cubic yards of soil, or 20,000 square feet of greenhouse. So very, very potent. Okay, you don't need to use a lot. I'm excited because now that we're in flower, it's the first time we get to use it. And so we're going to add a half teaspoon of this per gallon. And we're also going to add 2 to 3 milliliters of the catalyst, like always, because these enzymes will help feed this biology and speed up their process. All right? So we've got that. That's the main difference now. We've stopped using the aloe. We've put in our yucca, so the water's foamy. We put in our root-wise biofos and the enzymes to make sure that we're covered. Okay? And then the next thing we do is we continue this thriving. And I know a lot of people, they're going to look at this and they're going to say, hey, it's a 1500. I'm in flower. I don't want to use it. Believe me, at the teaspoon we're using, people could use this up to a tablespoon or more per gallon. On huge outdoor plants, guys use a lot of this. We used to use a product called Pure Protein Dry. Maybe you've heard of it. We think this is better, and it's a more single ingredient product. And so there's so much research. You could kind of go off the deep end just on amino acids. But bottom line, they're going to actually help chelate and continue the uptake of phosphorus and several other minerals. You know, if you go to like a GNC and you ask about mineral absorption, a lot of times they're amino acid chelated. So this is important. A teaspoon per gallon is not much. And when we include this in, especially during the stretch, that first transition when we flip to flower, they're going to really be needing this. They're going to be growing explosively. And this is kind of like that protein shake for them that'll keep them working at peak capacity. All right? So that's in there. We've got the rest of it going on. The Big Sick Micros, I just want you to continue as normal, 1/4 teaspoon per gallon. And then the freeze-dried coconut water, we're going to continue that now that we're in flower at a teaspoon per gallon. I think that's this one here. I keep it in the freezer. It's a very good tip. Otherwise, it could brick up on you. If moisture gets in there, it'll turn into a brick. So keep it in the freezer. It really helps. And then the craft blend. Now that you are into flower, and it's been a week since you put like a 1/4 cup of craft blend down and a whole bunch of BuildASoil. At this point, since we're talking about the next 4 weeks, if you think your plant needs it and it's pretty big, you can continue to add like 1/8 of a cup of the craft blend every other week, and a little tiny handful, like 1 to 2 tablespoons of Grokashi along with that, and maybe a handful of our beautiful BuildASoil, which I talked about. How really, once you add a little moisture to this, like if you keep it in the tub, it just turns just beautiful. Dark, black, rich. And so if you just add a little handful of this, it's keeping that mulch layer really stacked so new roots can grow in, the worms can break it down, feed the soil, and every time you water, it rains down a little bit. Like I said, the idea is to keep constantly adding a little back. And this is compounded when we're in a smaller container. So if you're even smaller than a 15-gallon, you're going to want to do that. If you're in a 100-gallon, maybe you don't need to do any more top dressing, okay? So keep that in mind. That's part of this schedule. And then the treatment, of course. In the first 4 weeks of flower, we can keep making sure we're clean. The treatment is very, very safe to use deep into flower, but certainly for the first 4 weeks, I would feel very comfortable using that 1/2 ounce or 1 ounce per gallon. I say 1 ounce because that's pretty much the normal amount. But you can go down to a 1/2 ounce, and if you do notice a problem, you could actually go up to a couple ounces. So keep using this. If you've got other products like the neem oil, we have videos on that. You want to make sure you continue a program so that as you get deeper into flower and you can't spray anymore, you've done a good job of keeping everything clean so you don't get wiped out later on down the road. If it happens, it's just really sad. So I want to make sure you stay in front of that. All right, so that is video number 5, and that is the video on the bloom transition. Like I mentioned, key points. You are going to see a dramatic increase in size in your plants. Some indica, or whatever you want to call it, some of the wider leafed plants will only stretch a little bit, if much at all. And talking to your breeder or looking at the pack of seeds, doing some research on the seeds you're growing, that's where that's going to come into play. A lot of the genetics I grow are definitely double in size. I really like to have that stretch so I can fill up the canopy and get some size in there without having to veg it for such a long period of time. And so during that transition, we want to make sure we have the top dress, and we want to really make sure we tend to the biofos and the coconut water and all these things that will really help it have all the nutrition required to really stack and build root system and build a canopy during that stretch period. And if you do this right, you're going to be set up for cruise control for basically the rest of the grow. So I hope that helps. Video number 5. The next video, video number 6, is going to be weeks 5 through 8, which is going to be your flowering and fruiting period where you're done with stretch. They're not drinking as much water and they're still starting to just stack frost and flowers. And this is really where most of the yield is built. The final video is going to be ripening, when they really stopped adding yield, but it's kind of determining when we're going to harvest. And so if you've enjoyed these videos, look out for that next one. The next one, like I mentioned, will be on the weeks 5 through 8. Again, if you've got questions, send them to support@buildasoil.com and I'll do my best to get back to you. Thanks. Have a great day.